Well, folks, welcome to one more edition of Politics and Random. Egberto Will is your host. Thank you so kindly for being a part of the show. We are going to have a great show for you today. Today we got an interview with a foreign affairs correspondent directly out of Kyiv, Ukraine. We're going to play that interview after I take care of business with you guys. Anyhow, welcome aboard. Welcome aboard. Paul Fleming checking in from ATL. Hit that like button. Don't forget, folks, hit that like button. As Paul says, go ahead and make sure we get those numbers up. So click that thumbs up on YouTube, that like on Facebook. We need you. Deb Denny checking in. Welcome aboard, Deb. How are you doing today? Also, AVQ is here with us today. AVQ, welcome aboard. And of course, you have our narrative for the beginning. Egberto, mind putting either of these images on the screen. Don't have the time to put the images on the screen right now, my friend, but we'll take a look at it. You have the links in there for people to be able to go ahead and link to it right now. Let's see, nearly 16% of Gen Z identify as LGBT. You know what I see here? The moral arc of history bending towards justice. Republicans have already lost the culture war. These numbers are large enough to swing the next election to Democrats, but only if Democrats promise something more than just voting against Republicans. I agree with you, but I mean, irrespective of what happens, we have to make sure that people judge and go ahead and vote. Anyway, Michael Ronin also says, Florida GOP denounced for making anti-LGBTQ bill even more dangerous. While the legislation originally allowed school personnel to withhold information about a student's sexual orientation or gender identity from a parent, if a reasonably prudent person would believe that disclosure would result in abuse, abandonment, or neglect, Republican Rep. Joe Hardin's amendment states that the school's principal or his or her designee shall develop a plan using all available governmental resources to disclose such information within 6 weeks after the decision to withhold such information from the parent. Roughly 40% of homeless young identify as LGBTQ, a 7 times disproportionate rate. Parents horribly disowning their kids after they come out of a non-binary has been and continues to be a major problem, and this is awful legislation will only worsen. I mean, this is turning into a Gestapo state. This is turning into, we want to control your life. Michael Rodman also says, Trump's new social network needs the tech law he hates. The former president tried to kill Section 230, but it's why his Truth Social site can ban users who annoy him. Palmer report, can't wait for Trump's Truth Social app to launch so it can immediately get suspended for rules violation. I expect the pound Truth Social to be moderated and censored, actually even more so than Twitter, as they are not likely to allow parody accounts or pornography. Conservatives aren't actually against censorship, they just want to be the censors. Exactly right. Also, he says details of Bernie Madoff's sister and brother-in-law's murder-suicide may be shielded by Florida law. Both suffered gunshot wounds, and officials said the scene appears to be a murder-suicide. While family privacy laws are important to protect the victim of major crimes, when I initially read this wounds as a plural, the first thing that came to mind was a cover-up conspiracy of a forced suicide, as if they were both found with 2 bullets in their heads. Egberto, any chance you've seen yesterday's Last Night Tonight video about CRT? I didn't, but now that you mention it, I bet it's going to be good because he does a great job. John Oliver, that guy. If not, recommend watch for the after the show, which I will repeat near the end of your broadcast. I appreciate that, Michael. We really want to hear that. My quick take, reactionaries still don't know what critical race theory is. They will lie about what they think it is, then proceed to have moral outrages over the lies they just told about the thing they don't understand, only to be parodied by others in their echo chambers as they burn straw and celebrate willful ignorance and then troll their insanity on the rest of it. It's a shame, but it's so true. Egberto, after watching yesterday's episode of Last Week Tonight's about CRT, I found a short Martin Luther King interview video that I hope you download and play tomorrow, where MLK talks about his Have a Dream speech turning into a nightmare. MLK, when a nation becomes obsessed with the guns of war, it loses the social perspective and programs of social uplift. I love that quote. Love that quote. Love that quote. Eric Hayes, welcome aboard. Canada police trample people with horses. Wow. I wonder if those people were trampled the way Trump did those people in that big square after they had that Black Lives Matter protest. I don't think he gassed them out of there. Trump gassed those out. Let's see what else we got here. Para ver. Eric Hayes also says, Egberto, what are your thoughts of the geopolitical issues and Russia and China provide in this area? Looks like Putin will move forward without any issues from the West because of weakness shown via Afghanistan and other types. If you believe that narrative of weakness and that sort of stuff, then you don't really understand geopolitical inst problems. If you think America can just decide, oh, Putin misbehaves and we're going to go fire it, Putin has nuclear weapons. What do you think? We're going to get into a nuclear war? Come on now, grow up, my dear brothers and sisters who believe the right wing crap. We have to stop at some point. But I tell you what, I actually have a correspondent out of Ukraine that has a lot to say. So let's go ahead and talk to Terrell right now, who is out there. He lives in Ukraine partially, and he has quite a bit to say. So let's listen to the person who knows and not the people who speculate or lie. Welcome to one more edition of Politics Done Right. I'm Egberto Willis, your host. As you guys know, we've been covering a lot of the Russia-Ukraine issues right now. Today, we are honored to have the host of Black Diplomats podcast, Foreign Affairs Journal. He's in Kyiv right now, and he knows all there is to know about it. As you know, we brought Norman Solomon and a few other people here. Well, we have somebody in the field right now. Welcome to Politics Done Right. Terrell, Jermaine, Starr, how are you doing today?
I'm good, brother. And by the way, I'm so excited about my painting. By the way, this is, this is a Black Ukrainian woman. I just want people to know that when it was commissioned, and it was painted by a woman that's from Donetsk who was displaced out of Donetsk, where the conflict is taking place, and now she is in Odessa, which is a southern city on the Black Sea. I've named her Svetquisha, Svetlana and Keisha, Svetquisha. You know what I'm saying? I just want to introduce y'all to her for those who are able, if you got the video and can see it,
Well, I tell you what, I'm going to make sure that it's seen. But before I even get started, you just got me into thinking. So we're going to talk about Russia and Ukraine right now. But I think what you've just brought to our audience is we've never thought, we know that everywhere have people of all ethnicities, etc. But for some reason, we have never, at least I have never seen them display anyone of any other ethnicity in Ukraine. So tell me, are there a lot of people of color in Ukraine?
Yes, and so that's an excellent question. Thank you for asking. I'll break down why you don't see Black Ukrainians in coverage. And so Black Ukrainians, Black peoples were introduced into this region around the late 1700s through Catherine, through the when Catherine the Great ran the Russian Empire, and so they came through the Ottoman Empire.
Okay.
And the reason why you saw that introduction of Black people into the Russian Empire was because the Ottomans, again, they were a part of the slave trade, and so they were introduced kind of as quote unquote presents to Catherine the Great, and so they served in her court, as servants, right? And so you will see, there are historical documents that depict Black people in Catherine the Great's court. And so now, in regards to the migration of those Black people and how they proliferated, that research is still being discovered. But there are Black Ukrainians here. There's not a lot of census data because, it's just simply not covered. So there are estimates that there are several thousand Black Ukrainians, which basically comes down to one Black parent and then one Ukrainian parent. Now there are African students here. They number in the tens of thousands. Most of them are from Nigeria. And so they are just students, they studied and they graduate. But the ones who are native born, it can range anywhere from 5,000 to 15,000, and they're all guesstimates basically. But you don't see a lot of Black Ukrainians in reporting because, for example, I'm a correspondent here and I'm actually going to be doing some coverage on Black Ukrainians. When you're a correspondent abroad, you essentially work as your own editor, and it's your discretion of what you choose to report to your bosses as a story of importance. Now, if you're at the New York Times, the Washington Post, Wall Street Journal, you name it, and you are a bureau chief, if you don't think that those people are of interest and you don't consider them a part of general society, then you're not going to prioritize them in your coverage. And so that's one of the primary reasons, I would say the primary reason why you don't see them is because foreign correspondents are not there, and mainly because foreign correspondents who don't look like us are not out there to prioritize our people. But you're right, brother. We're everywhere, and my work here will be to introduce those people to audiences like yours, and I'm going to be doing that in the next few weeks.
You know, this morning when I saw you on MSNBC, I knew there was a reason why I needed to and I had to speak to you because, again, I just got educated on that part of the world. So thank you so kindly. I'm probably going to go back to that a little bit later because now I'm intrigued. Now I asked you for an interview on one subject. It seems like we're going to have, if you have the time, we may have another
Yeah, that's
five
fine. No
minutes.
problem.
Great
No
to go on
problem.
another subject. But anyhow, let me ask you this. First of all, give us the genesis of the current Ukrainian Russian NATO problem in your words, because I've heard it in different forms. I am not sure what is accurate, what isn't. So please give us the proper narrative as you see it.
Thank you very much. So here's the thing. Everyone's going to point to 2014 as the genesis of this current conflict, and that is correct. And so Russia created and I literally mean created a story that Russian speakers were under attack. So he literally illegally encroached into sovereign land and on this false premise that Russian citizens were being attacked and were being abused, and took over the Luhansk and Donbass regions, which are in eastern Ukraine, and illegally annexed Crimea. Okay, and I'm going to break down why those regions are particularly important. And so you heard me earlier where I talked about Catherine the Great, and it's important to realize that Ukraine, it was during the Soviet Union, which basically 1917 into 1991, Ukraine was considered the breadbasket per se, right? And so this is a huge country in Europe, and the land is very, very fertile. And so you had all kinds of people, including Jewish people, who were expelled from Western Europe in the 12th and 13th centuries, coming to Ukraine. And so, but also during the SARS period, you have Russian ethnic Russians who migrated to Ukraine for job opportunities, etc., particularly in agriculture because of the land. It was easier to till, and you can make money from it. And so they started populating, Luhansk and Donbass regions hundreds of years ago, right? That's important context. And you had Crimea, and several hundred years ago, it was majority Crimean Tatar. You asked about ethnic diversity. Crimean Tatars are their very unique ethnic group, right? And so at first, you had the Greeks who dominated, and then you had the Ottoman Empire that dominated. Catherine the Great came in and took it, and I'm not going to say what year because it evades me right now because I don't want to be incorrect. But just it's important to know that Catherine the Great, conquered Crimea, and then slowly but surely that population in Crimea became less and less Crimean Tatar and became more and more Russian speaking. And so Crimean Tatars, they're Muslims, right? And so I'm giving you that important context because it goes back to why he wants this land. And so he's basing it on this false premise. It's not only a false premise, but it's the idea that this was always our land.
Mm-hmm.
That's what he wants to do. And so to make it simple, just as, European pilgrims came over to the United States, you have this mirage of the fact that they discovered America. What they did was came over and killed the indigenous population. Right? That is what Russia did through its empire. It's no different, right? They came and murdered indigenous communities. They are an imperial, bloodthirsty, genocidal culture, just like America. Let's just keep that straight, right? And so these centuries long stories are deeply etched in people's minds here, right? And so because it's a story about displacement, it's a story about reparations that they've never gotten. But anyway, going back to but it definitely goes back to 2014. And now when you think about and I brought up colonialization, this is really important because during the Soviet period, there, you had the former Warsaw Pact countries, you had Poland, and then you had, these countries in Central Europe like Hungary, you had
Georgia.
Well, Georgia was USSR, right? They were
Gotcha. Yeah, USSR. Yes, correct.
Part of the 15, right? Then you have to again, but listen, you're close. Don't worry, you're close. But you're dealing with the Warsaw Pact countries. That's Romania, and then you have Bulgaria, right? Because those were the those were the countries that were satellites, right? And
Right. The
so
buffers.
all the buffers precisely. And
Right.
so after the USSR fell, they immediately went to NATO because they said we've all experienced this Russian colonialization and we were not culturally Russian oriented. We are not into this Russian sphere of political influence. They wanted to go more into the West. And so after in the early 2000s and going into the early 2010s, you had basically 1/3 of NATO, which was composed of these former Warsaw Pact and USSR countries, including the Baltic countries, right? And so the culture of NATO shifted when these countries came into it. And so I'm pretty sure you heard a lot of discourse about, people saying, hey, we do not want, NATO is this imperial nation that's led by the United States. It's true to an extent, but it's true, but it's complicated. And so once you decenter the United States and realize that these former Warsaw Pact and USSR countries were wanted to wanted to join NATO simply because they did not have the military power to protect themselves.
Right.
Then it becomes less about America and more about these own countries wanting their own sovereignty. And so Ukraine is a part of that because basically they're like that one straggling country left behind as far as any EU, Eastern European members are concerned. Like, come on, y'all. It's like, come on, man, you could do it, you could do it, you could do it. And so they're like so basically Ukraine is not under Article 5, which means that if you mess with all of us, you mess with one of us, you got all of us. So Ukraine is not in that position anymore, and Russia is pinpointing Ukraine because he realizes that this democratic nation, if you allow this to flourish, then people in Russia are going to think, oh my God, we can do that too.
Right.
And so it's not so much a NATO thing because listen, if Putin cared about NATO, he would have attacked a NATO country. But Putin don't want that smoke, and he don't want that smoke, right? And so what he's doing is he's bullying this country and using it as a chess piece to pressure, particularly Germany, right? Because Germany, one thing people don't know, up until 1989, Russia split that country in half.
Right. Eastern
That's why
Germany.
Eastern Germany, right? Because you had Angela Merkel who spoke fluent Russian.
Exactly. In fact, she was under that domain. Absolutely. She was part of the USSR. Yeah.
Important context. Yeah. So that's what I'm saying. So all of this context, and I'm happy that I have the time to really break this down to you because all of this stuff matters. If you don't understand colonization, because that's the thing, going back to Germany, they have their own fears. So people are like, man, Germany, a bunch of punks at the third. And it's like, okay, you can say that, but it's a little more complicated than that. But at any rate, Ukraine is right now is a country where they definitely want EU membership, they want NATO membership, and they have a really legitimate reason besides Russia in order to justify being so because they are the most combat ready military in all of Europe, not necessarily most technologically advanced,
but they're ready.
But they're more so than France, Germany, or any other country. I mean, you can rival their combat readiness to that of the United States,
right?
For the wrong reasons because we shouldn't be invading other countries. Well, that's a whole nother story, brother. We can have a conversation about, but we're talking about Ukraine now. But yeah, that's a general synopsis.
That is simply amazing, and I don't think you have heard this entire articulation on the mainstream media. And we are here just sitting down thinking it's, it's just the fight between NATO and the United States. And it's a lot deeper than that.
It's extremely brother, this is so complex.
Right.
Very complex.
Now, you are in Kyiv. What is the attitude there now? What's the feeling? Do people feel like, I think the original belief was that since he is way on the eastern side, that he would have just come and taken those lands that are in dispute right now. But now I understand that in Belarus, there are battalions there as well that are probably a few hours away from Kyiv, which presents a problem if that's his intent, correct?
That's absolutely correct. So north of Kyiv, it's about 2.5 hours away. And so literally if you take a drive up, that's all it takes now.
Belarus.
To Belarus, yeah, exactly, to the north. And so keep in mind that Chernobyl is north of us, right?
Oh, yeah.
So
Oh God.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah, yeah. And I've been twice. And so those, and they have the type of equipment that can handle the radiation to come through there. Because I've been to Chernobyl twice.
Right.
And I was actually going to go. I don't know if you know the brother Malcolm Nance, who's on
Of course, and
MSNBC.
Nance. Yeah, the CIA guy. Right.
Yeah, 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 yeah. So basically, he was an NSA.
NSA
But
guy.
basically,
I'm
NSA,
sorry,
yeah,
NSA.
yeah, yeah. Listen, it's all good. It's the same to most of us, but it is NSA. But basically, we were supposed to go up to Chernobyl to to visit because he's never been. I've gone twice already, but
Uh-huh.
but at any rate, um, they can make it through that zone in a matter of in a matter of days and fighting. And so what Malcolm Nance was saying and his own assessment was that they, after a few days of fighting, they can surround the capital, but they're not going to take it. And the reason why they're not going to take it is that these people in 2014 during the Euromaidan, more than 100 people died, and they faced down the state security services who shot at them and killed their fellow countrymen.
I
And so they're not,
remember that.
yeah,
Yes.
yeah,
Yes.
and yeah,
These are fighters, man. They're not gonna just
they're fighting.
3 million of them.
No. And so Malcolm, in this city alone, okay, and there's 40 plus million people in the country, and it's a huge, huge country. And so the way that Malcolm described it was, this place will turn into the white Taliban. Um, yeah, I mean, listen, it sounds facetious, but it's real because every person that has a finger that works and they have access to a gun is subject to shoot any Russian in boots and in
Gear.
military gear. I mean, because these people are extremely resilient. They're not going to be welcoming Russia with cookies and milk. That's just for sure. Now, I'll tell you what they will do. What they will do is that they could take the entirety of the Donetsk region. And as you know, that there was some there is some bomb shellings in
Yeah,
in
today
Donetsk.
actually they bombed a elementary school or something a couple days
Yeah,
ago.
yeah, that's correct. And so basically, what could happen is that the Russian military could take the entirety of that region. Many people think that they have all of Donetsk, and that's not true. They have
Uh-huh.
a nice chunk of it, but they don't have the entirety of it. So they can take that, and they can take maybe some other larger cities, and then they can come in from the south through the Black Sea and the Azov Seas. And basically, what they can do is come from the Donetsk, then come from the Azov Sea from the south, and kind of like bring in more position and come together, right? They
Right.
could do that part, but as far as advancing further than that, that's going to be rough because simply put, they don't have enough soldiers. They
Right.
would have to literally throw all their soldiers in because the Nazis came in and took over. They had double, from my understanding, double the number of soldiers to take over this country. Russia doesn't have that type of manpower in order to do it.
Right.
They would have to leave their country entirely defenseless in order to take
To
over this
come
country. I
and
mean,
try to take something where the
yeah,
people are going to fight them. Now, that's a pretty modern city, Kyiv, right?
absolutely.
It's just like being in, let's say, Houston or New York or Boston or one of
Yeah,
those places.
yeah, yeah. Great. Yes,
Now,
sir. Very modern.
well, I'm glad I spoke to you because I want to actually, I better back up because I spoke to
Mhm.
two other people who follow the Russia Ukraine issue, and one of them, Norman Solomon, in fact, another friend of mine, he said, "Well, Egberto, think about if Russia put a whole fleet in our Gulf, and he put some people in the Canadian border and the Mexican border. How would we, as the United States, react?" Now, before you answer, you came with a very important perspective to first note that both Russia and the United States are colonizers. So in effect is
Yeah.
one colonizer versus another colonizer in this respect. Now, how do you measure what Norman Solomon said? I think what Norman wasn't trying to be pro-Russian. I think what Norman was doing is saying, practically speaking, Russia is scared to hell of NATO.
Practically yes, but actually no. Okay, so
Okay.
let me bring. Okay, so let me bring up the practical. Look, and I argued this in a recent article with Foreign Policy. if America was threatening to invade Mexico, for example,
Mm-hmm.
right, and we had 100,000 troops at their border, and we were constantly menacing them with takeover threats, I would have no problem with it.
Mm-hmm.
But that's what I'm saying. Practically, if that were the case, that I would have no problem with it. And so and that type of argument dangerously flows into the whataboutism, even though he did not intend it to be that way. And I'm going to explain why.
Mm-hmm.
Because let's go to the actual. What's actually happening is that NATO has no interest in militarily having a standoff with Russia because it's suicide.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Russia is a nuclear power.
Exactly. I'm glad you point that out. Yeah.
They are a pure nuclear power. Remember when I said Russia doesn't want that smoke, but NATO, if it listen, America don't want that smoke either. They are a
Right.
nuclear power. Now, their conventional military doesn't stand a chance against it would lose one-on-one versus NATO, right?
Right.
But from a nuclear standpoint, you don't want those problems from either side. And so the reality of it is very simple, going back to why I gave you that earlier history and context.
Right.
The only reason why, listen, if Russia spent more time building up its own country, building up its own economy, as opposed to threatening countries that no longer want to be a part of it, then they wouldn't have to worry about NATO, right? And so NATO is only attractive if you fear a Russian invasion or a Russian attack. What these former Warsaw Pact countries and USSR countries see in Russia are three things that happen to a smart Russian. If you are a Boris Nemtsov, if you are a politician who is fighting for democratic freedoms, they just kill you, and they'll kill you near the Kremlin, which is what happened to Boris Nemtsov, right?
Mm-hmm.
Now, if you are somebody like Alexei Navalny, if they don't kill you,
They
they
lock
throw
you
you in
up.
prison. They lock you up. Now, if you are the guy that created the social media site Contact here, which means in contact in Russian, and it's basically the Russian Facebook, what they do is they tell you, give us your data, give it to us now, and you refuse, they just rush you out of the country, right? And so this guy, this very intelligent mind that could be of use to Russia is in the West.
Right.
Okay. So they scare you off. If they can't kill you, they imprison you, or they just flat out kill you. Those are the three things that happen. Now, if you're in Ukraine, do you really want to be a part of that? Because it's really it shouldn't come as a surprise that the co-founder of Google, who is a Russian, is in the United States.
Right. Right.
So again, this
Bryn.
is important. Yeah, but see, this is important context, because if you are thinking about NATO, right? NATO is a military alliance, and look, it has all these complications. And again, brother, if you bring me on the show, I'm not a pro NATO person at all, and I can break down to you on a separate conversation about my views on defense. I think the American industrial complex needs to be completely dismantled. I think our military budget is bloated. It needs to be cut significantly. I can give you a whole spiel on that. But the thing about but that situation is not what we're talking about today.
Right. You have
What,
to keep apples and apples. Right.
right. Yeah. So basically, we need to keep focused. Going back to the person who brought up this scenario of what if this and what if that. What's happening right now is that if Russia was not a threat to these other people's security, this wouldn't be an issue for Russia. And even if Ukraine did become a member of NATO, NATO serves no harm to Russia whatsoever, because the reality of it is a country that really is self-destructing anyway. It's kind of like the Soviet Union. The way I tell people about the USSR, let's just say if there was not this big diplomatic push by Ronald Reagan to really undo the USSR. If it didn't fall in 1991, it would have fallen in 2001 because it was economically unsustainable, right?
Right.
It was a politically unsustainable structure. And that's the same thing with Russia. Their population is dwindling every year. It's a country that covers more than a dozen time zones, and it has roughly 150,000 people for a country that big, right? And America has 3 times the population. And so I'm just
with an economy the size of Italy.
Yes. You get what I'm saying? And so when you think about NATO isn't invested in in trying to destabilize this large country because, again, they control so much of the energy market. Anything happens with Russia, gas is a globally traded commodity. And so they export very little gas to the United States, but because it's a globally traded commodity, we are going to hit it at our gas pump. So it's not economically feasible or makes sense for NATO to want to have some military confrontation with Russia. It's not good for business.
Right. Well, look, let me tell you, first of all, you've been extraordinarily enlightening, Mr. Starr. Let me ask you something first of all. How long have you been in Kyiv?
Oh, listen, oh man, I've been coming back and forth since 2009, and so I came here as a Fulbright grantee to take a Russian language course, and then I did a photo project on Black Ukrainians, and so now I'm starting a couple of businesses. One business is a tourism business. Next summer, 2023, I plan on bringing 600 Americans here in groups, in groups of 25 people. Starting in the late spring of next year and going into the early fall, in October of next year. And so I'm starting that business. The website is going to go up in April. And then I have a clothing business here that's kind of like ethnic modern wear here. I would have to show you to really explain, but that's going to be coming up soon. But I've been here since January. I planned on the beginning of January. I planned on staying for 3 weeks. I was supposed to leave January 31st, but given what's happening here, I felt like my presence was needed to be on the ground. And also, listen, I have friends here who I love and care for, and my love for the people I've grown to see here are far is deeper than friendship. And I would feel a little guilty if I left and I wasn't able to help and contribute and to be on the ground and provide knowledge to people like yourself. I'm much more useful to you being here in Ukraine and giving people on the ground analysis because of my knowledge and my experience. There are a few people who can give that analysis like I can, and the stories that I'm going to be covering over the next few weeks won't happen. They wouldn't be happening if it wasn't for me, particularly a Black person who understands.
Well, and that is why I just love your perspective again, because what we get is a status quo, plutocratic type perspective. Whenever you get the standard reporters, that is not to knock the standard reporters. I mean, I knock them enough for being milk toast. Okay. But what we need to do is we have to have perspective. And like I said, when I heard you this morning, that's what I heard, perspective. Tell us a little bit about your podcast. Tell us a little bit about how people can get to you.
Yeah, thank you very much. So my podcast is called Black Diplomats, and it's a podcast that focuses on the intersection of race and foreign policy. And I named it Black Diplomats because I want Black people, I don't care if you've never left the country, I want Black people to know that they are Black diplomats. And for my podcast, I purposely want people to say Black, right? Hey, you're going to say Black because I want people to associate Black people with foreign policy. And so each week, I primarily focus on Eastern Europe and Ukrainian and Russian politics, but I have people of color. I have people who are local, who are indigenous, right? And so, it's Black diplomats. And so I have the most diverse panel of experts talking about Russia, Ukraine, and Eastern Europe than any other podcast that you're going to see. If you want to get to it, it's on all of the major podcast platforms. I encourage people to go to iTunes to give me a 5-star rating because I do great content. And also on my Twitter, Russian_Starr with 2 R's. People can go, and I have ways in which people can contribute to my podcast because this is by myself. I don't have any support. I'm just doing this solo, and I really survive. I really focus and thrive off of people who are investing in the work that I do.
Let me tell you, I am, first of all, very impressed. I want to thank you for giving me this extended amount of time. I'm glad that we cut it from the 10 minutes that we were going to do right after the show to where we could have some time to spend together, because I've learned a lot, and I intend to have you as much as I can on different issues, because I can see that there's a hell of an intersectionality here. Terrell Jermaine Starr, also on Twitter, at Russian_Starr, host of the Black Diplomats podcast. Please check him out. I'll have it all in the blog. Thank you so kindly for having been on Politics Done Right.
Thank you, brother. Appreciate
All right, folks. I hope you enjoyed that. I saw him on MSNBC, and I'm like, I need to talk to this guy because he really was given a perspective that added a bit more context to the entire issue. Anyway, thank you very much, Deb Denny, for reminding me that it is time for me to play
Berto
this.
Willis, as host of Politics Done Right, a progressive radio media show on Pacifica Network's KPFT 90.1 FM Houston that engages all ideologies. I found that our political angst isn't mostly ideological. There is a well-designed effort by many in power to control us. If we are at each other's throats, we are less likely to demand our economic and local wishes. In that light, I wrote 3 books. I wrote the first one titled, As I See It, Class Warfare, the Only Resort to Right-Wing Doom, to describe the entire economy in a manner we can all understand. It highlights why it was designed to pilfer most as it empowers a few, the chosen. The second book, titled, It's Worth It, How to Talk to Your Right-Wing Relatives, Friends, and Neighbors, take it to the next level. After understanding how the system pilfers, it is incumbent that we can speak to our peers to empower a change. The third book, How to Make America Utopia, Take Away the Economy from Those Who Rigged It, gives us a place to land. After learning about our economy that is dysfunctional for most and learning how to engage the other side, we point out what would make an economy that works for all. Each book stands on its own, but together they provide the full picture. Please consider getting one or more. You will undoubtedly learn, be entertained, and help us continue the mission with our blogs, articles, videos, and books.
Yes, yes, yes. So please go ahead. The link to get my books, of course, that politicsdoneright.com/books, politicsdoneright.com/books, and I'm about to put it in the feed right now. politicsdoneright.com/books. Please go ahead and make it be today's bestseller. Make it be today's bestseller in the political stream. If you go get it right now, we have enough people watching that we could actually get some traction on that. Alternatively, please support us by clicking on that join button on YouTube. Click that join button on YouTube to show folks that you appreciate the work that we're doing. We simply could not do this without you. So please go ahead and click that join button on YouTube. If you don't see a join button on YouTube, just go ahead and click on this link, politicsdoneright.com/YouTube, politicsdoneright.com/YouTube. You can also support us at our Patreon. politicsandright.com/Patreon. Patreon is spelled Patreon. politicsandright.com/Patreon, Patreon. But of course, a good old standby, which we always love as well, politicsandright.com/PayPal. politicsandright.com/PayPal. Provide us with anything that you can do to make sure that we can keep giving you that information and bringing that material over, interviews, etc., that improves, increases our knowledge so that we cannot continue to be screwed by the plutocracy, who's intent on keeping us dumb, because a dumb populace is a populace we can have do just about anything. We have new products in our store. Check out our politicsandright.com/store, politicsandright.com/store, and get a mug, get a t-shirt, get something, and then take a picture with it, send it to me so that I can add it to the website or add it here for some of our people to see you wearing the logo that has Politics Done Right on it. Now, you can also support us by going to politicsdoneright.com. Did I put that store up there? Yes, I did. You can go to politicsdoneright.com/support. politicsdoneright.com/support. It's the all-encompassing way to support us. We have all the different methods that you can use, whether it's be PayPal, whether it be Facebook, whether it be YouTube, Patreon, Cash App, Zelly, everything is on that particular page. politicsandright.com/support. However you wish to support us, our supporters all get mentioned on our website, where we say these are our great supporters, and we have hundreds of supporters. We need thousands of supporters, and we got to get this job done. Anyway, going back to your feed, let me say hello. Senor Roberto Lewis, how you doing, mi hermano de Panama? Welcome aboard, E2247. I don't think I saluted you, nor did I, Deb Denny, even though Deb reminded me that, Egberto, it's time to post your links. Thank you so kindly. Daniel Ledo says, first of all, welcome aboard, Daniel. Thank you for being here. He says, LOL, China is behind all of this. They have been planning for this for 50 years, not long now. We are in their end game. First, approve America important against Russia, then take Taiwan and well, I don't know, but, maybe you know something I don't. Daniel Ledo, I don't know. June Litter, welcome aboard. Littler, welcome aboard. Hooray for Terrell. Glad we have contact with him. He's an incredible contact. Look forward to this next visit. We need his invaluable input. Thank you, June. Carl Cox says, never fear. Carl Cox is here. Well, you know, brother Carl Cox, you are always here because we love you. Everybody loves you here, brother. And Norman Reynolds says, great interview. Thank you, Norman. Coming from you, that means everything. Eric Hayes says, peace through strength. Sounds very Reagan-esque, my brother. I think I apologized to you earlier, buddy. I was a bit too, I guess, a bit too, sorry for the cough, a bit too accusative on you, brother. So I think I cleaned that up. Saludos, mi gente. Politics done right from Roberto Luis. E2247 says Terrell was in Kyiv and Malcolm was in Kyiv, about 30 miles southwest of the Polish-Ukraine border in northwest Ukraine. Yeah, they were together. In fact, Malcolm Nance donated, I saw on the Twitter, donated $500, right, to to Terrell's, because Terrell had to raise $20,000 for this last trip to the Ukraine, right? So Michael Nance, you know, the NSA guy, gave him $500, and then he said, all right, Terrell, you are now responsible for taking me out for drinks every time I'm in Kyiv. And I imagine he's going to say, of course, come on to Kyiv. We'll go go get a drink. I just hope Kyiv is still there. I think it will. Eric Hayes says, good interview. Is Terrell ex-military? No, Terrell didn't serve, but Michael Nance did serve. Michael Nance, I think, served in the Navy. And I'm looking to try, I'm going to get an interview with Michael Nance as soon as I can. I got to find him first, but, you know, I'll go ahead and get one set up with him. By the way, we have an interview also set up with the candidate for Lieutenant Governor of Texas, which is Mike Collier. Actually, Mike Collier is a neighbor of mine. Love the guy. We'll talk to Mike Collier. I think I'll bring that to you on Wednesday on this station and probably on Thursday at KPFT. I'll bring it here first. So we have a lot of stuff scheduled to come out. So we're going to make sure everybody's informed. But before we get any further into this, I have some good videos for you. First, let me set this up. You know, you remember what Trump said when he was running. He said, Hillary, why are all your people taking the Fifth Amendment? That just means you're guilty. That is what the mob does. You know, that is what the mob does. You must be guilty for doing the Fifth Amendment. And, you know, everybody ran with that. The New York Times and everybody ran. And they actually unfairly, I'm not a Hillary fan, but they were unfair to Hillary. It was the woman thing and a bit more. Well, I mean, on the Cross Connection, they covered that. I want you to see what they had to say, and then we'll take it on the other side. Check this out, and we'll be right back.
I want you to take a listen, because you brought up that the fact that these two could essentially plead the Fifth. But take a listen to what Donald Trump said about people who plead the Fifth.
When you have your staff taking the Fifth Amendment, taking the Fifth, so they're not prosecuted. Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment, Fifth Amendment. Horrible. Horrible. Her staffers taking the Fifth Amendment. How about that? There are 5 people taking the Fifth Amendment, like you see on the mob, right? You see the mob takes the Fifth. If you're innocent, why are you taking the Fifth Amendment?
So I just think it's really interesting that he, constantly contradicts himself, but I don't think his base, ever cares to hold him accountable for when he does that. It seems like the people holding this president accountable the most are Tish James, and of course in Georgia, Fani Willis, with the whole election denier case. I want to get into this National Archives story a little bit. Now, the National Archives did confirm that Trump took 15 boxes of documents to Mar-a-Lago after he left the White House. We talked about that in the open, including some documents marked as top secret. Now, Trump, of course, has denied all wrongdoing, as he is known to do. But we're also having this conversation while there are rumors circulating about him running in 2024. Will this have any impact on midterms? Will it have any impact on the speculation about him running again? And I should say we're way over time, but I do want to give you a chance to answer.
I'm just going to say very quickly, the hypocrisy of the New York Times here is off the charts. If you look at what they did with Hillary Clinton and her alleged email scandal versus how they basically buried the story of Trump eating classified documents, is off the charts and shows you just how much bias we have in the media for Trump. In terms of punishments, I think that one of the problems here is that the Presidential Records Act has no teeth. But the destroying of classified documents, that's what we got Oliver North on. So we should maximally prosecute that. And yes, it could be used to prevent him from running for office again. And again, this happened in Iran-Contra. It can happen again if we have prosecutors willing to go to the mattresses to get this guy any way they can.
Yes, it's time to get this guy. We also must remember that Donald Trump Jr. took the Fifth Amendment over 500 times. So the truth of the matter is, yes, we have a double standard in the way the news media is covered. And believe it or not, part of the responsibility of January 6th is because we gave so much traction to Donald Trump, who was able to mislead so many people, who got their minds fried and got all of them running down to Washington, D.C. for an insurrection that many of them now see Donald Trump was just there to use them, and when they got into trouble said, bye-bye. And now in order to win, he's saying, well, maybe if I run and you guys elect me, I'll pardon you. So please, please, please elect me, please. No, that's not going to work. It won't work at all. Anyhow, continue, and we have another good video for you. All right. A lot of people on the right like to criticize how Biden is working with Russia. You know, I have some issues, as Terrell also illustrated, with the U.S.-Ukraine policy, U.S.-Ukraine-NATO policy. But as Terrell said, we shouldn't be doing whataboutisms. We should not be doing whataboutisms. And you know what? It seems to me like somebody the right really, really loves agrees not only with Terrell, but they agree with quite a few other folks. Hey, by the way, I think I saw Tom Danahy in here. Brother Tom Danahy, one of our show's great supporters of he said he liked the show. Thank you, Tom. You know, if you like this show, we know we're doing the right thing. Anyhow, let's go ahead and play this right now.
But I remember giving a talk to a group of Ukrainian young legislators a few years ago. And I said, I know you have a difficult international situation, but imagine if the FRG, the Federal Republic of Germany, had said for that 45 years, well, we really can't progress until we have our eastern half. We can't get stronger. We can't build an economy. We can't build a democracy. But instead, they did quite the opposite. They built a powerful democracy. They built a powerful economy. And when the time came, the East Germans wanted to be a part of that, not the other way around. And so I would say to the Ukrainians and to the Ukrainian people, this is a very sad and difficult time. I hope that we are supporting Ukraine's aspirations strongly enough. I have to say that I think that the Biden administration is playing a difficult hand rather well these days. And it is ultimately, though, up to the Ukrainian people and their leadership to keep trying to build that strong, democratic, independent Ukraine that is fighting corruption and building an economy. It can be done.
You know, earlier this year, Condi Rice appeared on The View, and she wanted us to get away from January 6th. So I was really concerned whether Condi Rice was going all Trump crazy as well. And, we know Trump has criticized Biden, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Well, after I saw this yesterday, I said, I got to air this one because Condi may be getting back into where she's always been, which was, we couldn't believe that she worked for Bush, but that's okay because, as it turns out, she's going back to just where we expected her to be, a conservative woman who believes in some neoliberal policies, a part of the world. That's who she is, but at least she's not a Trumpian. So that is important. It's good that she realizes that based on our current neoliberal being, Biden is just following the script as good as Clinton, Obama, or Bush 1 and 2 would have. Our military script, irrespective of parties, except under certain conditions, general is the same. The military industrial complex runs everything. Anyhow, I'm back. Michael Ruddin says, fighting corruption, which those in DC cared as much about corporate corruption as they do about foreign policy. You're so right, my friend. Eric Hayes says, smart lady. E2247 Terrell Jermaine Starr is a senior reporter at The Root, where he writes about U.S.-Russia politics and race in America, and he's a non-resident senior fellow at the Atlantic Council's Eurasia Center. He previously worked at Foxtrot Alpha. Yes, I wrote that in the blog, so check it out, guys. Let's see what else we got here. We have Daniel Lado says, Trump could be dead and those bozos would still be trying to get him. For your information, the rest of us have moved on. I wish the rest of you had really moved on. Unfortunately, you have not. Carl Cox says, orange man far worse than Hillary. I agree with you. Let's see what else we got that I missed. I think I want to make sure and salute my brother here, Tom. I think I saluted Tom already, but I saw Tom. Let's see, Tim Dennehy. I thought I saw Tim Dennehy in here. I thought I saw Tim Dennehy. Did you run away, Tim? No, there it is. Tim says this is outstanding. So thank you very much, Tim. Hi, Melanie. Superb. Egberto on today. Thank you very much, E2247. Putin wants to crush democracy in Ukraine, according to Carl Cox. Let's see. What else we got here? Coming down to the bottom, we have Tom C says, hey, Tom, how you doing? And folks, don't forget, coming up next week, not this Saturday, but the other one, it's Ask Egberto Anything. I want you guys to sign up. Please go ahead and sign up. If you go to the newsletter that gets printed out just before every show, you can see that. Tom C says, by keeping the Russian people fearful of foreign enemies, Putin wants to distract attention away from domestic, economic, and political disasters and stay in power. See Tim Snyder's Road to Unfreedom. Thank you for that one, dear brother Tom. I had not seen that. I haven't read that book, or I think it's a book you're referencing. E2247 says, lived in Ukraine as a Fulbright fellow and a freelance journalist. He's also lived in Georgia. Yes, he has. All right, let's see what else we got here. Orange Man and Clinton and Trudeau are all comparable in what way? I imagine you're going to answer that, Eric. I don't know what way you want them to be comparable. I don't think we can put Clinton and Trudeau in the same similar boats, but Trudeau is quite a bit more liberal than Clinton. Clinton is actually Hillary Clinton. I don't know if Hillary Clinton was ever very liberal, because Hillary Clinton, again, she emanates from a Republican family and a rather conservative one. Narcissistic. I see what you're saying, Eric. Eric, you know what? To be a politician at that stature, I think they all bear a certain level of narcissism. But my God, brother Trump was guided by narcissism. So, I mean, I'll give you partial credit on that one. Just partial credit, small credit. All right, let's see what else is up. Folks, I don't have any more videos to show, so whatever last few messages you send me is what I'm going to throw up there. And it says, Michael Rodin says, Hillary Clinton was liberal when she proposed universal health care during Bill Clinton's time in office, then failed to get it passed. Daniel Lado, wait, I want to answer that, so don't leave yet. If you take a look at what Hillary Clinton's healthcare proposal looked like, universal healthcare proposal, it is so, I don't know, I think you're too young to have seen or break it down. But I remember the first time Hillary Clinton brought that thing to the screen, I almost passed out. It was nothing like liberal Medicare for all. It seemed even a bit more complicated than Obamacare in trying to keep these private insurance companies alive with all these different permutations. I went crazy when I read that stuff. So it doesn't surprise me that it never made it. Okay, heading out soon. Michael says recommend video after the show last week. Tonight talks about CRT. I'm going to definitely listen to that one or watch that one, Michael, because I love what he does. He does a very good job. Eric Hay says, did Hillary stand by and defend her husband against women when he was governor? Yes, she did. She stood by her man. She did the Tammy Wynette thing that she said she would never do. She did it. And I mean, that's their personal business. Who cares? Not my business. All right. Anybody else has anything to say before I shut this baby down? Go ahead and put it. You have about 30 seconds to tell me a few more things, and I'll be happy to read it out. Or is there anybody that I failed to acknowledge? If I failed to acknowledge you, forgive me. You know I love you no matter what. My lefties, my righties, my everythingies. I think I got Melanie. I got you right, Melanie Keaton. I think I got you. Let's see. If I didn't get you, drop me a line real quick. Carl Cox says Trudeau isn't bad. Truck drivers who cause trouble in Canada. All right. Critical race theory last night, tonight with John Oliver. E2247 reiterated what Redden had to say. It's 4:59 here on the East Coast. I'm about to leave unless I get one more message that you guys want me to read out. So I wait and I wait and I wait for one more message. Anybody's going to shoot one more message before I shut this baby down. Norman Reynolds says, is there a discussion you recommend for the state lieutenant governor? We are going to be talking about what the current lieutenant governor is doing, which is actually trying to take tenure away from professors who even talk about anything that had the semblance of critical race theory. If you look at the Houston Chronicle, you'll notice that the lieutenant governor candidate had much to say. Melanie, yes, I'm glad I got you. Do some research on Trudeau. Actually, I had to do research on Trudeau and his daddy several times. You must remember his daddy was Prime Minister of Canada as well. Well, anyway, folks, thank you so kindly for being here. I know you could be anywhere else. Please remember to support the program. We cannot do this without you. How can you support the program? I'm not going to put all the codes in there again. I'm going to give you the catch-all. Please go to politicsdoneright.com/support, politicsdoneright.com/support, and support the program however you can. My name is Egberto Willies. This is Politics Done Right. And you know what? You guys know how I end this baby. I am wet out.
We spend a lot of time deconstructing the news, trying to parse it into a form that everybody can understand. We try to find those little nitpicks where it flies above the fray, etc. If you really like these videos that we do, I want to ask a big favor. Please go ahead. Number one, subscribe to our channel, and number two, please join if you can. Thank you so kindly for watching. Keep watching. Please remember to share. We must populate the entire internet with our progressive message, a message that we know is what most Americans say that they want. So help us, please join.